we really were woken up to the fact that artificial intelligence was incredibly vulnerable. It's vulnerable at a code level. It's vulnerable at runtime. How do we secure artificial intelligence?
Welcome to the Keep Austin Secure podcast. This is the podcast where we sit down with leaders, founders, and innovators shaping the future of cybersecurity right here in Austin. From startup journeys and hard-earned lessons, we dive into the stories behind the people building one of the fastest growing hubs in the country. Today, we have Chris Sestito, founder and CEO of HiddenLayer. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
No, and Chris, for the folks who are listening who aren't familiar with who you are and your background, please feel free to give us an introduction.
Yeah, I've been in the cybersecurity world for quite some time, probably the last 10 years, kind of at the merge between cybersecurity and data science. Came up on the East Coast. I was doing some work at a firm that did effectively like attribution work. So we would get a threat and we would take a look at it to see kind of who did it. And I was doing that, as I mentioned, kind of in the Virginia area for some of the big prime contractors for defense contractors. And then I sort of started really catching on to the fact that machine learning was a really powerful tool in that sort of space, and machine learning models were a lot better than I was at sort of understanding kind of what patterns in like an author of a malware sample or somebody wrote a virus looked like, and so I started becoming very, very interested in that. Sort of merge with the technologies. Cyber is a man-made science. You can, a model can fully understand it. You don't really get that in things like, natural sciences, where you have to really only operate in whatever you can understand or whatever you can quantify and digitize for something like training a machine learning model. And so I became really interested in that. That brought me to a company called Cylance. I learned what they were doing. They were using artificial intelligence really to be a replacement for old antivirus technologies, which was basically just signature-based tech, which for those who aren't aware, really that means lists of bad things, like effectively. And so it would change. It would check your computer to see if an exact match of any of those bad things were on it. And threat actors started catching on to that. So they really did things like just flip a couple bits or make a couple tiny changes, and now all of a sudden antivirus technology can't protect you anymore. And so what Cylance was doing now, which is what all the sort of antivirus companies or next generation endpoint security companies do, is build models to detect that kind of thing. And you can even predict something that you've never seen before that was good or bad. And I thought that was very cool. So went there for about 7 years, finished up running what they called research and intelligence, which was both the threat research and data science parts of the organization. After that was acquired, Cylance was acquired by BlackBerry. I stayed there for a bit, then went over to a company called Agari, where we were using machine learning again to detect phishing campaigns, any sort of email threat. And that was a really cool problem just because of the scale. The scale of email is enormous. So it was cool to be able to build models for things like really quick campaigns. It would take a very long time to build a model, but a phishing campaign might only take 3 days or something like that. So we were kind of learning how to deal with those problems. That was pretty great. Then I went over to Qualys. I was the first chief data scientist at Qualys for a bit, and then founded HiddenLayer.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And you've been in Austin for how long?
About 9 years now. I was in the DC area before that, and about 9 years ago, while at Cylance, they wanted to open an office out here, and so got the opportunity to come check it out. And my wife and I kind of fell in love with the place.
Amazing. Yeah, I know Cylance had quite a lot of folks, didn't they, from Austin? And there's a great run and great story to be told from that journey. Mm-hmm. What was it that led you to actually setting up HiddenLayer? I know some of the founders, or the founding team, came with you from Cylance, Qualys, into HiddenLayer, but was there a specific moment where you thought that there's something here?
Yeah, it was actually during our time at Cylance. So yeah, you're right. Jim, Tanner, and I have been together at the last 6 organizations, actually. So we've kind of traveled as a pack for a while. Jim and I have known each other our whole lives. And then, Tanner was the first person I hired at Cylance. But it was actually an event that took place at Cylance. We actually had some threat actors downloaded a free trial of the Cylance product, and they performed one of the world's first adversarial AI attacks. They actually, in the wild, they were actually able to download a free trial of the product and reverse engineer the model out of the product just by submitting adversarial samples to it and seeing how it was scored. And today we call that a surrogate attack. Back then it was pretty novel, but ultimately it was a pretty consequential thing. They were able to reverse engineer the model. They were able to use that information to build bypasses for the Cylance product. They were able to ultimately recreate that model offline, sell it on the dark web. It was just it was a very sort of impactful event, or all around sort of adversarial AI. And so me, Jim, and Tanner kind of were putting out that fire. We spent about 4 months on this problem. We never really solved it. We just sort of were able to do things like mitigate the problem. I'm not sure, I'm sure a bunch of stuff's been done since then, but we really were woken up to the fact that artificial intelligence was incredibly vulnerable. It's vulnerable at at a code level. It's vulnerable at runtime. Our sort of thesis was all the things that you need to do to secure an endpoint, you're also going to need a solution sort of form fit for artificial intelligence. And back then it was predictive models. And then if you fast forward to today, that's like Gen AI, LLMs, agents. And so, but that was really, it wasn't a stroke of genius or anything like that. It was just, we got attacked and we were like, okay, so we need, everybody who's going to be investing in artificial intelligence is going to need to secure it. And that's really what, we decided, really it was going to need to, be a standalone company for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, AI for security is one of the hottest topics at the moment, and it has been for quite some time. How important actually is the problem that you're solving for enterprises?
Listen, I can't overstate it. I mean, it's massive, and it's for enterprises today. We do it for government agencies, but it's really, when you look at just all the things that are starting to become powered by artificial intelligence, when you look at sort of how quickly the world is adopting artificial intelligence in different ways. I mean, we went from it being a buzzword 5 years ago to it really being like, the driving force behind most technology today. So it's incredibly important. I think there's not an enterprise organization on the planet that doesn't have just a heavy commitment to their AI strategy. And, everything that they're building is, really getting plugged into their private data, plugged into their protected technology, their intellectual property. And so, when you start looking at things that exist today, like, prompt injection, when you look at things like, different boundary attacks to reverse a model, when you look at things, that can abuse agents, like tool abuse, tool faking, like all of this now brings, a ton of vulnerability to these enterprises. So it's incredibly important, and it's really come about very, very quickly. I mean, I think it was, even last year, we'd be having conversations with CISOs going, I have to secure my AI. And then now it's like their number one budget item. So it really has, come about pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about this beforehand, just how quickly this market has changed, specifically around AI. And how I can imagine when you set up the business and the idea that you had for the business has changed completely in the last 2-3 years, and obviously the progress and the momentum that's being built. How do you stay ahead of those changes, or what can you do to stay ahead of those changes, if anything?
Yeah, there's things you can do. Like for us, we really built our technology to be sort of agnostic to the mechanism for that ultimately leading to the artificial intelligence decision. So what I mean by that is like, we didn't build a solution for a specific AI model out there. Or a specific way to interact with that model. Like, there's, we didn't build a browser plugin for visiting ChatGPT's website or anything along those lines. We built like a core technology to detect legitimate and malicious traffic going through these models, and then ultimately that grew into a full platform of offerings that we have today. But I think the answer to your question is really like build something that's sort of agnostic to the form factor and more targeting the core need. And because we've done that, now we've been able to sort of grow the tech to address sort of the most recent example is sort of the proliferation of agents, and our technology works on agents because we didn't build it specifically for any kind of model or LM framework or infrastructure. We built it for artificial intelligence, as a whole, and so that's something that really serves us well today. But I mean, I think the real answer to the question is like invest in the research. I mean, we have an enormous investment in research here at HiddenLayer. We have the largest collection of adversarial AI experts on the planet, and that allows us really to stay kind of at the forefront. It allows us to produce, some of these malicious behaviors before threat actors do. It allows us to really understand, what these needs are going to be and try and stay ahead of it. Whereas, if you're a small shop with, a handful of researchers, you're always going to be trying to, to really play catch up. As we're a research-driven company, a research-backed company that, everything that we do ultimately ends up affecting the platform that we're selling. But, our big commitment and our big sort of our resource allocament is really targeting the research folks themselves.
Yeah. I think I was quite fascinated when you told me about the size of the research team.
Yeah.
It's what was it that actually prompted you? I know obviously your background would hence why is such a research heavy business, but anything in particular that's prompted you to have that size of team?
There's no other way to do it. I think that it's a necessary thing when you're in this space, like just like you mentioned, as quick as it's moving, as quick as it's shifting, to try and do this with some bare bones research team. I mean, you'd have to fake it or whatever. I mean, it's not when you look at sort of the supply chain side for models, there's so many different model file formats out there. Everyone's kind of building their own. There's a bunch of open source formats. NVIDIA has Nemo, Microsoft has Onyx. Like everyone's kind of building. Like we have to understand those file formats, those structures. When you move into the runtime side and you're looking at, like threats in the predictive space. So for traditional machine learning models, threats for LLMs. So when you're looking at, which oftentimes can be more like a social engineering attack, really breaking that down. And we've got 8 different categories now for adversarial prompt engineering. When you look at, being an expert in the agentic side for tool calling, computer use, different sort of tool faking and abuses that take place there. That's not one person's job or a team of 5. So for us, we have our research team's huge. 26 of them are adversarial AI specialists themselves, which is when you talk about outside of academia, there's not that many of them in the world. I mean, there's a couple hundred. And so, we've been working very hard to collect that group. And many of us, we've worked together in the past or had some affiliation in the past. And so that's been, a good thing to work with a lot of the, folks that we've already established that working relationship with. But to build a platform for AI security without that sort of expertise, it might be relevant for a month, at the speed that everything is going today. So, I don't really feel like we had a choice.
Yeah. I know we were talking beforehand about the momentum that the business has built and how much has changed over the last 12, 24 months. Are you still seeing pushback at all or further questions from CISOs these days around this topic?
I think they've all pretty much recognized that this is something that they need to invest in. There's not pushback in the should I at this point, but there's certainly questions around how should I and where should I prioritize, what matters the most. So, a year ago, some of our conversations, well, I should say, 18 months ago, a lot of our conversations were like, you are going to need to secure these AI assets that your teams are building. Today, it's more like, okay, well, there's 200 Gen AI applications at the organization. Like, what do we do? So we go in there, we help them discover them all. We show them that we help them understand, which ones are at the edge, which ones are facing the public internet, which ones are dealing with PII, which ones are dealing with financial transactions, all that kind of stuff, and help them come up with a plan. So I think it's the CISO community is much more aware of the fact. Like if you go to a CISO event today, they're talking about how do I use AI to do my job better? How are threat actors using AI to attack us? And then, how do we secure our artificial intelligence? It's really it's sort of a self kind of fulfilled idea at this point. It doesn't require people like us bothering them anymore. But that wasn't the case. Even a couple of years ago, it was much more around. The conversation I used to have with CISOs is like, I'm not asking you to make any new decisions. I'm asking you to take decisions you've already made and apply them to the artificial intelligence space. And, I think today that kind of goes without saying, whereas, a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was a little bit more of an educational sort of activity.
Yeah, we posted in our community group, I think it was maybe a month ago now, in the Slack channel, we were doing a webinar about security. We had quite a few security practitioners, maybe 100 plus security practitioners based in Austin. And we put in topics. We said, hey, guys, we're going to be doing a webinar in the next 4 weeks. What are the topics people want to see? I think out of 15, maybe 14 said security for AI. And there you go.
It's not only is it sort of a novel topic, but it's coming on so fast to be like an in-production issue that I think that's I'm not surprised. I mean, I think it's it's a scenario where most of them are active practitioners in the space today. And so they care very much about like, what should my strategy be? And many of the group, as I'm part of it as well, but many of the group of decision makers in the space. So, they're trying to understand like, I need education on this topic because I'm supposed to be making decisions on it right now. So not surprised at all, but that's very cool to hear.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And I know 2023, HiddenLayer really came out the blocks. The Innovation Sandbox win, which was huge. How, looking back on that now, how significant has that win been for the trajectory of the business and just awareness about the business in general?
It was awesome because I feel like it was one of the first sort of catalysts for people feeling like they had permission to care about AI security and security for AI. I think before that, it was very much like, people are like, okay, you're throwing some buzzwords around, but like, is this really something that we need to care about? And then when an institution like RSA, sort of awarded that to us, it was like, okay, a lot of folks were like, okay, this is a real thing. We need to care about it. It brought us a lot of attention. It was an amazing experience for us. It helped us in fundraising. It helped us in just sort of like inbound interest to the company. Like most of our lead generation is still probably due to that win, where all of a sudden it went from like us knocking on doors to people calling us. And I think that was a big sort of moment for AI security in general. And so I think that was it was a great experience. It was it probably did bring us to a new level as far as both as a category, but definitely for HiddenLayer.
Yeah, the awareness in general was crazy. I remember looking back at 2023 RSA, and HiddenLayer was the big name that it came out for the entire industry, didn't it? It was fantastic. And there was a deep fake version of yourself, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's how we did it. So you only have 3 minutes to impress everybody.
Yeah.
And so the way we kicked it off was our Andrew Davis, one of our chief data scientists, or our chief data scientist, created a deepfake of me. He used he trained a model based on the submission tape that we used for entering into the competition, and then he took that and then he made the deepfake of me say, Innovation Sandbox judges do not vote for HiddenLayer. And then I come out and say, hey, that's not me. I would never say that. But this is what this technology can do today. And so I think it was a cool way to get everybody's attention. Now I think I see that quite a bit. Actually, I see a lot of people kind of like deepfaking themselves to show kind of awareness in the space. And I think that, or deepfake, a celebrity or a political figure. And I think it's really important for us to understand number one, how easy that is to do. I think we made the video with like $3. Like it was just, it was required. Now and most of that was because we didn't want my lips to seem weird, because originally it worked really well, but it didn't look as organic. So we found some solution for $2.99 we could buy to make that a little bit smoother. And so Andrew did an awesome job on that. But yeah, it got a lot of it's probably the reason that or one of the biggest reasons why we got some votes.
Yeah, probably the best $3 investment that you've ever made.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, if we look at sort of what the company's doing today, I was to say that was a good $3.
Yeah, and the founding team is you, Tanner Burns, James Ballard.
Mm-hmm.
You've all worked together, obviously, as you mentioned beforehand. Between yourself and those two, what are we all bringing to the table? What are the strengths that others have that maybe you don't, that has really led to the success of HiddenLayer and shaped what it is today?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, we're very similar. In a lot of ways, we're a bit different. Because we're 3 technical founders. We've kind of been in that space for a while. I was a malware reverse engineer and then got into data science after that. Tanner was a little bit more on the automation, and he was a Python engineer for a long time, and he built one of the world's biggest CTF competitions as part of his I don't know what kind of submission it was in college, but he built it there. And Jim has been with me on the malware reverse engineering side. And he spent a lot of time in the data curation space as well. So like if we wanted to train a model to do something like, understand what family of ransomware this is or something like that, like he spent a lot of time in that. But generally speaking, it's like, it wasn't like a marketing guy and a sales guy and a tech guy. It was 3 of us who had kind of come up through the same levels there. But that being said, we've kind of fallen into our grooves. Like, I drew the short straw, so I had to be the CEO. But Tanner's our chief scientist. There's nobody better on planet Earth at creating new technology, new solutions for problems. Like, we'll be talking about something and he'll go off and he'll spend the night, especially now that he can use tools like, different vibe coding tools. He was doing this before that, but even now, he'll build something so quickly and so that's amazing. Jim has really caught on to a lot of things. Number one, he's still in DC, so he's kind of handling a lot of the federal space. So he's on Capitol Hill a lot. He's working with a lot of our Department of Defense, intelligence community, and civilian partners on that side. And he does a lot of our compliance as a result, because so many of those compliance needs are for kind of appeasing the requirements by those organizations. So he spends a lot of time in that world. And then I'm the guy who begs for money, whether it's an investor or customer. So the jobs kind of fell in pretty nicely. But that being said, we still talk every day. We still kind of like tackle the big problems together. We're on Discord all the time. We just keep Discord up, so we're just talking to each other whenever we're not in a meeting. We're talking to each other, and we find other dumb ways to hang out and spend time together. Our families are friends too, so we find like there's a lot of times, like, in a way it's great because we can talk about the business all the time. It like infuriates our significant others because they're like, hey, we're supposed to be at the pool right now and we're talking about like how do we land this customer. But that part's cool. Like starting a company with my best friends has been like an amazing sort of thing, and I feel very, very lucky because I've seen when it doesn't go that way too. And when you see people who are like,
course.
hey, on paper, you and I are a great fit. Let's go start a company together. And then, we hate each other in a couple weeks time or something. And like, so that's, I always say if we somehow manage to burn HiddenLayer to the ground, we're still going to hang out. So I think that's, it's an important part of trust, and it's an important part of knowing, like, whatever this looks like 10 years from now, we know the three of us are going to be a part of it. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and that type of thing as well would be really good for just general business culture as well, wouldn't it? Being able to know that we are friends, and although we have goals that we need to hit, we have investors, so on and so forth. I think not being two strangers who just want to work together and build a business does definitely add that element of like culture to an organization.
I believe it does. I think it matters, especially because we share a lot of values. We don't really feel super different from each. I mean, we disagree on stuff all the time, but I mean, in like the important things, I think there's sort of a core set of values that we really kind of all three really believe in, and I think that really helps with the rest of the team kind of seeing that, believing it. I think there's a lot of authenticity there that doesn't necessarily happen if you've sort of manufactured your founding team based on resumes that fit. But there's downsides too, right? Like, I mean, like none of us knew anything about marketing or go to market. I mean, I sold food off a truck once. Like that was like our experience levels. Like I was the most experienced one on the sales. So like it was like, so it means you have to have a really strong advisory group. It means you have to partner with the right investors, partner with the right people, hire extremely well in those spaces, because you're effectively, when you're three technical founders, you're implicitly trusting your first go-to-market hire.
Yeah.
And it's knowing that it's not an exact science, and supporting them in every way that you can, and trying to learn from them in every way that you can. But it's a scenario where that probably wouldn't have happened, or we'd have felt a little bit more sure-footed in that space if one of us came up out of that kind of career. So there's pros and cons. I definitely like the way we did it more than some of the other opportunities, but there are kind of strengths and areas that you need to kind of solve for.
Yeah, and as a first-time founder CEO, building almost like an entirely new category in security that's so emerging and so fast growing. I can imagine this has been a very different role than anything you've experienced before. Looks like the business is really starting to take some super exciting shape, a lot of traction, and kind of riding the wave at the right time, and really maximizing that. But would you have any advice for, say, first-time founder CEOs wanting to come in, whether it's a existing category where they're fighting against the big boys, or whether it's coming into an early emerging category? What would be like one or two top tips or best piece of advice that you could give to someone who is sitting in front of you today?
Yeah, I think like the team you build is probably the most important thing, no matter what. Like, I actually believe it's probably not easier, but I think it's probably better that as a first-time founder in a new category, it's almost like, well, everybody's new to the category. So, I don't really feel like you're as much of a disadvantage as you are from somebody who's kind of going into like cloud security that's existed for 10 years or something like that. So, so I think that's kind of helped in a way. But yeah, I would say the team you build is the most important thing. I firmly believe 80% of your success is going to be determined by like who you bring in. And so I think you should spend a lot of your time on your interviewing process. You should spend a lot of your time making sure that you have a good gut feeling. Like, I have a weird interview process. I ask two questions and I want them to talk for the rest of the time. And like, I think that's like, I arrived at that after like a bunch of other ways that I didn't like that way that I was doing. I've done a lot of interviewing throughout my career. So I think that's helped, but like really understanding how you're bringing in the right people. And for us, that's been, a strong interview process, but it's also been working with a lot of people that we've worked with in the past. I think that's been a big issue. We like when people hire their friends. We like when people hire people that they trust as well. I know a lot of companies are against that. A lot of companies don't like, for those relationships to happen. We're the exact opposite. We're like, this is your roommate. They're good at it too. Like, yeah, get them in here. And like, that's, that's a big deal, because I think that really helps sort of, build a lot of that sort of trust that needs to be there. So number one is going to be like the team. Focus heavily on that. I think everything is sort of an after effect of that, or will be affected by that. The other thing is like, feel really strongly about what you're doing. I think there's certainly in the 2021 timeframe, there was a lot of people who are like, I want to be a company. I want to be a founder. I want to be the 30th person to build an identity access management company or whatever. Like, it's like, there's like, and that was kind of fine, because like at the time, like everybody wanted one and you could do that kind of, like to be like, I'm going to do that too, was kind of okay. But now I think, things have gotten a little bit more realistic, where you really do need to be bringing value in a differentiated way. And there's no there's no kind of replacement or thing you can fix down the road. You can certainly pivot the organization, but like spend a lot of time focused on like on your idea, on how you're going to make it work, why it's going to be different, like what value you're going to be, not necessarily from the business standpoint of like how's it going to generate revenue and what that's going to look like. Obviously, all those things are important, but you'll have really smart people helping you with that as long as you're bringing value to those who can, who need it, especially in cybersecurity. But I would say, don't just show up trying to figure out like, how you can be the next carbon copy of a lot of customers that are there and saying, like, I'm going to do it better because I'm going to focus on a customer. So like don't say like have a real plan, spend a lot of time on that. I think like, we're Jim Tanner and I, we're going to work on AI security for the rest of our lives. Like that's an area that we're experts in, we care about, we know how important it is. That's creating HiddenLayer is, certainly there's a lot of good timing there as well. But I mean, it's something that we want to work on. We're not just like, if this fails, we're going to go start some other tech cyber company or something like that. Like we know that there's a need here and a shortage of people who can solve it. And I think that's really important. So I would say your team is probably number one, and then make sure that you're doing something that you are okay dedicating your life to, and that you're okay recruiting people to dedicate their lives to it too, because there's a lot of founders out there doing that for the sake of like, what's going to hit at the right time, what can I quick flip, what can I blah blah blah, and I think that that's just a different way to go about it. So I think that that's everything falls into place when you're doing it for the right reasons, and so that would be my two biggest points of advice.
Yeah, is it everything that you expected it to be, or is it different? And if different, what are like the key things that stand out to you?
It's very different from what I thought. I thought it was me, Jim and Tanner, writing code and building solutions, and that's not my job at all. I think it's I used to be pretty good at taking apart malware. Like now I write a mean email. Like I mean, it's so that part changes. I'm usually somewhere around 70 meetings a week. I never thought that would be a real thing. Like so that stuff's very different. It's all very cool that I get the opportunity to do it. So I would never complain about it. Certainly better than the early days when you're trying to get a meeting. So it's that's no problem. But it's very different than what I thought it would be kind of running a company. I think it's things are pretty logical in general. Like there's usually, if something's different, it's because you didn't think about it in the first place. It's not necessarily something that didn't make sense. But getting into the venture-backed world was very new to me, and so I was reading a bunch of books right out of the gate to try and figure out, okay, like what's VC, how does it work, why does it matter, like what is the goals, what are you trying to accomplish, why is it different than something you were able to bootstrap, is that an option, like all that kind of stuff. But yeah, very very different. I think in a way it's there's a lot of similarities when me, Jim, and Tanner were running, teams inside of companies instead. It was still all the same core beliefs were there in terms of how we would build our team. It just was part of something bigger versus its own thing. But yeah, I think my role specifically is probably the biggest difference in what I not necessarily, not that I wasn't ready for it or didn't know what it would be, but just in terms of like how I thought I was going to spend my career prior to HiddenLayer. Like it's just been very different.
Yeah. No. And you took the 50 million Series A from M12, Microsoft Venture Fund.
Mm-hmm.
How critical has that been to the growth of the business?
It's been fantastic. I mean, we are the cybersecurity solution inside of Azure today for model security. So when you go on when you go on Azure and you go into the AI catalog and you click the security tab, you'll see HiddenLayer. You'll see all our output for the different models. So that's been fantastic. It really helped us mature quite a bit, because if you can build something that works for Microsoft, there's not many organizations on the planet, commercial or otherwise, that you're not mature enough to build. So I think that was pretty cool, and really helping us kind of move quicker. And then just in general, they're a great brand to be associated with. We met a lot of awesome people who have helped me learn and grow. There's it's a fantastic organization. Satya Nadella is a wonderful leader. I've taken a lot of cues from him and tried to emulate a lot of the leadership style there. So I think that's it's been very cool to be associated with them. And then we also kind of in ways compete with them too, right? Like, I mean, they're also trying to build AI security solutions, and so it is kind of like, but that's kind of the world today in general. Like, it's you're kind of frenemies with everybody. everybody. So you're, everybody's trying to do a little bit of everything. And so there's complexity. But, they're in particular, our investment team, the M12 group, they've been phenomenal. I mean, they're, just highly effective at kind of getting you in front of the right people and helping you mature the organization and being a good resource for you. So, it's been really a great experience.
Yeah. What was it that made you choose M12 over, I can imagine, quite a long list of potential investors that you had at the time?
We were very fortunate after the sandbox, that I think, there was a lot of attention on us and a lot of folks that were trying to invest in the company. And honestly, the real answer is like the partner, Todd. I like him a lot. Don't tell him that. He's a sharp guy. He's had the experience. He's been an operator himself. He's been with companies that went well. He's been with companies that didn't go so well. And so he just had a really strong level of experience. And I think we kind of clicked with him early on. And then in general, there was no company on the planet that was investing in artificial intelligence more than Microsoft. So I think that was really what made sense in terms of how that worked. They also weren't really the way they do investment. It was different than other CVCs, which I thought was really helpful. Like they're not forcing you to do any business with Microsoft. They're just investing because they think it's going to be a good opportunity for Microsoft. We still partner with Google. We still partner with AWS, and they're happy about that, right? So I think that's I like that setup. So I think that it's really been a strong sort of piece. But I think the reason we chose it was probably Todd, our Todd Graham. Our partner.
Amazing. And what do the next 12, 24 months look like for HiddenLayer? I know obviously as we're talking, it feels like this year really seems like the year that's the business has started to kick on. The maturity of the market's definitely there. The awareness is there now. What do you think the next year at least looks like for the business as you continue to grow?
Yeah, a lot of what the first half of this year, I think, is really kind of going to really be what we see for the next sort of 2 to 3 years, and which for us is sort of scaling alongside artificial intelligence, right? There's so much sort of growth and new sort of adoption in that space, and one of our major benefits is we work on predictive models, we work on Gen AI, we work on agents. So when we go to an enterprise organization, they like the fact that they're not have to bring in 3 different vendors there, and then a different vendor for supply chain, a different vendor for runtime. Like the fact that we can kind of holistically cover a lot of this, I think is really helpful. And so I think that really growth is kind of the if I had to pick one word. But prior to this year, we were kind of working with 3 to 5 new customers a quarter. Now it's 15 new customers a quarter. And so I think that we really need to scale. In the early days for us, in the seed round, in our A round, we invested very heavily in research, like we talked about. I mean, R&D was over 90% of our resource allocation. Now, I think we're getting to a scale where we kind of need to balance the scales a little bit, invest more in a go-to-market team, build more of a scaled motion there to be able to grow. Because prior to this year, it was me, Jim, Tanner, our sales leaders, our executives, effectively kind of being the sales team, and that was good. I mean, but now it's we want to talk to 50 customers in pipe this quarter. So it's okay, how do we really scale that to a level that makes sense? And so I think it's balancing the scales. We'll always be an R&D first company. We'll always be a research first company. But instead of 10%, maybe it needs to be 30% or something like that. So I think that's that'll be a little bit more of the view for us. But I mean, honestly, it's us really trying to help companies that are heavily invested in deploying artificial intelligence do that in a trustworthy way. And so I think that, we work with a lot of financial institutions. We work with a lot of Department of Defense, intelligence community. We work with big tech companies. But that's starting to grow too. Now we're in insurance, healthcare. We're working with retail companies. We're working with organizations. There's not really a category that isn't investing heavily in artificial intelligence. And so we want to make sure that we're growing to have experts in those industry areas as well. And so there's a lot of that. So I think we're going to grow quite a bit. We're going to keep doing all the amazing things we're doing on the research and development side. But we'll grow that team as well. But I think we're going to really get better and bigger at scaling to work with more organizations.
Yeah. I think the future definitely looks super exciting for the business. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see where, if we record another podcast in 12 months, 24 months time.
We can say when. We can say
when. When. There we go. That's the spirit.
I think, I see a lot of growth, as I mentioned, kind of vertically alongside artificial intelligence. But the other sort of cool part for what we're really focusing on kind of, maybe 3 to 10 years from now is a lot of the underlying technologies that need to be secured today becoming artificial intelligence. So, I really think we're going to have an opportunity to really lead in cyber as we start looking towards, as I mentioned, 2 to 3 years scaling alongside AI. LLMs replacing search engines, routing being done with artificial intelligence models. I mean, like when you start to look at like, okay, like the way we're going to secure all technological assets here in the very near future is by securing artificial intelligence. And so we really need to grow into an organization that can facilitate that. And that's, so down the road, I think that's a lot of the things we'll be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, it's super exciting. And in terms of this podcast as well, we'd love to spend a bit of time and talk about your Cylance experience, given it's a Austin security dedicated podcast.
Absolutely.
I think it would be, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice not going through Cylance. I guess just finally wrapping up with HiddenLayer as it relates to Cylance, how do you feel like, besides, as you've mentioned, the identifying the real problem that brought the idea of HiddenLayer together, how do you think that experience kind of shaped your background and knowledge into setting up the business? And are there any transferable skills that you've seen that have really set you up for success since setting it up?
I mean, it was probably the most impactful bit of experience I had kind of moving into it for a couple of reasons. Like I came into Cylance as an AI researcher and as a adversarial malware researcher. So I was, and then when I finished, I had a group of almost 200 people. So I think a lot of that, it taught me how to, really build teams. I had leadership positions before that, but not at that scale. And certainly not. I mean, it was cutting edge technology. It was, they were the leader in really, we were the leader, I should say, in the sort of the next gen endpoint protection space. And so, it was still, maybe not at the speed of AI today, but at a very quick speed. We had to learn how to like build a team, build technology, get it in the hands of our customers. And so I think in that environment, I learned so much. I had so many amazing mentors. We had, starting with Stuart McClure, who founded and co-founded and Ryan Perma, who are still, people I talk to all the time, and are involved with HiddenLayer. I think my mentor for the last 10 years is a guy named Josh Lemos. He's a CISO at GitLab today, but he was my boss at Cylance. He was the one that asked me to come out here to Austin. And I've learned so much from meeting people like that who were just amazing at amazing people leaders in fast-growing technology spaces. I think that was a big part of it as well. So, I learned a lot about, how to build teams, how to run teams, how to treat people, how to, form long-lasting relationships. And a lot of that has really very directly benefited HiddenLayer. So I think it's, it was a big part of growth for me, and from going from an individual contributor into running an entire department.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so different being in the endpoint space versus being in security for AI.
Very different. Yeah. Very different. But in some ways it's very different. But the motivations are still the same. Like when you secure an endpoint, you care about the supply chain, you care about the runtime, you care about red teaming, you care about security posture management, which is the same thing we do now. We just do it for artificial intelligence, which is fundamentally a very different technology, but the motivations are the same. Does a threat actor want to bypass us with malicious code? Do they want to trick us with their behaviors? Do they like that's all sort of very in principle, similar techniques, similar sort of what you're solving for. But yeah, the technology is sort of night and day different as far as what you're securing, and so that's a very different sort of world that we're operating in. But a lot of the lessons still apply.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously Cylance sold to BlackBerry, very well-known exit, one of the big exits coming out of Austin. How big was the business and how mature was the company when you joined the business?
So I was employee number 100, and that was back in 2014. And then when it finished, it had well over 1,000 folks. Their HQ was Irvine, California, but they had the big office here in Austin. Yeah. So it had grown pretty significantly. I can't remember if I joined. I think I joined Series B, and so I didn't know what that stuff was back then. But so it had grown pretty significantly. And then it was a public acquisition. It was a big sort of play that BlackBerry was making at getting into the cybersecurity space, and they already owned some technologies that were operating in vehicles, that were operating on satellites. There was a lot of very cool cohesion there around the fact that like Cylance could operate on an endpoint. It took up very, very low levels of CPU, and so there was a lot of really cool stuff they were able to do with that technology. And so that was very cool. It was a great experience for me to see, like, now I've been part of like a public acquisition and a private equity acquisition, so kind of seeing the difference and helping, being a key member of those teams as you kind of work through those transitions. I learned a ton from that. And so it was an awesome experience.
What were the biggest differences between the private equity and the public acquisition?
So the public acquisition it's a different beast. Like, it's something that where they really want to. I mean, number one, there's a lot more sort of compliance related things there. It's a publicly traded company coming in and acquiring something versus a private equity company who can kind of be like, I have the money, did my diligence, I can do whatever I want. Assuming that you're not running into like antitrust issues or running into an issue of like being a monopoly or something along those lines. Other than that, it's kind of fair game. And so in the private equity, you're dealing. We were I was working with Agari, and it was bought by a company called Help Systems. Today it's called Fortra, and they've done a ton of acquiring in the space. And so like it was, but that was a little bit more of a machine of a process. Like, they were, everybody was trying to move fast. Whereas the public acquisition side, you now have regulators involved, and so I think the process can take a year on that side. Whereas I think it may be even longer. Whereas in the private equity side, it's sort of like, you guys ready? We're ready. Okay, we're happy. We're going to do it. So it was very different. But time is the biggest difference. But certainly the level of scrutiny that you're under is very different on the public side, because you're using the public's capital now. You have a lot of public shareholders, and so it's it is a different sort of set of things that have to take place. So it happens over a longer period of time, but more stuff has to happen. So it's not like it's less rigorous or more rigorous. It's just sort of like more stuff that has to be done.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the biggest change.
Yeah. And with Cylance, as you mentioned, you came in early stages, employee number 100. What do you think led to the success of the business? Is there any like secret sauce that you can share around, obviously, product, team, vision, etc.? Is there anything that maybe you learned from that you've taken into HiddenLayer that you thought, if we can replicate something similar, we could also do something super successful?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons there. I mean, I think that, number one, it was a very good product. And I think that mattered. Like, it solved the problem that the customers had. It solved the problem that traditional antivirus couldn't do. And they were the first ones to do it. And I think, there was certainly a lot of other success like there. I mean, it was an incredible vision. It required, a strong leadership team. It required a strong set of execution from the individual contributors as well. But I would say the biggest standout was like, the product worked. It worked well. It was better than anything else on the market. And I think a lot of things sort of get impacted from that. And so that's been a big, it's the reason we're so heavily in the, invested in the R&D side. Like, we need the best platform product. And, we have it, and we're, we don't just want to be like, okay, cool, we've got it now. Like, we want to grow that delta and really, make sure there's a lot of efficacy, make sure you're not causing false positive problems, make sure that you're, growing the breadth of your features, make sure that you have like the enterprise maturity required for doing business. Cause that's hard. I mean, when you're a brand new startup and you're like, oh, I want to sell to the biggest bank on the planet. Like, okay, like now you have a lot of like things that you have to check off while also making sure the product works. And there's a lot of sort of, they're used to working with the best vendors on the planet. So they're used to things like, I want to make a claim and I want this feature, I want this whatever. And everyone's usually saying, yep, no problem, we'll get to it for you. And when you're working with a relatively small subset of resources, like those things kind of matter as well. But yeah, the product was really good. I mean, it was really good. It was different. It was differentiated. It did things that other products couldn't do. And I think that's really what led to that level of success. I mean, there's even more success in the space now from other sort of endpoint security providers that have really grown into platforms, but I think they really paved the way for a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there a specific time, I guess, potentially when you joined, or why you joined the business, but was there a specific time when you were in the business where you thought, wow, like, there's real potential here, there's something?
Before I joined, I beat down the door until they let me in. So I was like, when I saw the technology, the folks they had there were brilliant in the space. They're real. I think it was the first clear example of the merge of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. And I think, there's a lot of cyber examples where like, the marketing team is saying like, hey, we got to say we're using AI, like figure out how to make that work. But like Cylance was a very AI first company, and they had a large data science team. They were, really invested in that. And I think it was, I was really actively trying to get in, and I sort of believed in that company very early on before even joining. When then ultimately they finally caved, and I got a job, and so it was there was a lot more validation of my beliefs after being in there and seeing the leadership and seeing those things. And again, I met a lot of folks who are with us at HiddenLayer now, so I certainly believed that it was a effective team. But yeah, I would say again, it was back to that kind of advice you would give founders. Like, it was a very good idea. It was differentiated. It was valid. It brought value to the customers immediately. I mean, they used to measure success based on like how many of the customers weren't working weekends, like that kind of thing, where it was just like, okay, you're really changing lives. And so I think that, that was, that really was meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. And moving into Austin as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you chose Austin to set up HiddenLayer.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, remote workforce, not every single person is in Austin, but what made you choose Austin over Bay Area, New York?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's advantages and disadvantages, right? Like, I mean, I think a couple things that I really like about Austin. Number one, I feel like it's a little bit more startup led than it is like big company led. Like, if you go to a cyber event or like a cyber recruiting, like hey, let's all get together and do, whether it's networking or something along those lines. If you do that in San Francisco, that's going to be driven by like Salesforce or AWS or something like that. If you do that here in Austin, it's a collection of startups that are putting something together, or maybe a company that's supporting a bunch of startups putting something together, and I like that more personally. Yeah. It's way easier to recruit somebody to come here, and that's why we did it at Cylance when we opened up the office there, because we had an office, we had people in seats, and it's just much easier to ask somebody to come live in Austin than it is to come pay whatever $5,000 for a shoebox to live in every month, and so that's tough, and so I think I like this city a lot. I came from the DC area. When I came out here, I was only asked to come out here for a short period of time, and then Kristen, my wife, and I, we kind of fell in love with the place. We were like, let's stay here. It's a better spot for our kids. It's a better spot for setting down roots, and so we like it a lot. We have a lot of folks here. We have about 30 people here at HiddenLayer, and I think that everyone's pretty happy about the area, and so I think that matters quite a bit too. But there's fewer face-to-face meetings with venture capitalists. There's fewer customer meetings here, so you fly a lot, which is probably my only complaint. Like, we need a bigger airport. We need more runways. We need all that kind of stuff, so I can get more direct flights. I think that's probably my only gripe. But you're in the middle, so your flights to both coasts aren't too bad, and so that part's kind of nice as well. But yeah, because I spend a lot of time in the Bay Area, I spend a lot of time in New York, a lot of time in DC, and yeah, it's so there's advantages and disadvantages. Like there's a lot of business here too, though. I mean, there's a lot of most global companies have an Austin office, or quick drive up to Dallas or down to Houston. You can meet with a lot of business as well.
Yeah, and I guess the airport's only 15, 20, 30-minute drive for everybody, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that part's not too bad.
Yeah,
so it's easy to get to. It's a cool airport. I mean, there's a lot of live music. There's a lot of, if you're stuck for a layover, it's not a bad one to be in. But yeah, it's not quite the same as like pulling into Atlanta and getting anywhere you need to go. So
yeah. I guess it's only a 4-hour flight to the Bay Area, or 4-hour flight, isn't it, to New York? And I don't know. On your point, I don't know many people who don't like living in Austin. I know people who've moved to Austin who've maybe moved back to the Bay Area for a certain reason, but they didn't enjoy their time whilst they were living here.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's not. I mean, it's you can get into the middle of the city. There's great like nightlife. It's the music capital of the world. There's great food here. There's a lot of outdoor activities. There's a lot of outdoor areas to go. So like it's like all that stuff that you're looking for is great. You can have the city. You can drive 15 minutes and you can be in the country. Like I think that's really cool. And there's not a lot of places that can kind of make that claim. And it's still, I mean, it's getting worse, but it's still pretty affordable compared to those other places. Compared to New York, DC, and San Francisco, it's affordable. So I think that's a big win too.
Yeah, you just got to be able to survive the summers.
You pay for it. Yeah, you pay for it in the summer, but you get about 8 months that are amazing. But then, the summers, those are inside.
Yeah. Coming from Manchester, moving here in February, as you can imagine, this is very, very different.
We have. Although, I mean, look, there's been some heat out your way a couple times now too.
I know, I'm good about it.
Our head of research, Tom Bonner, he lives in just north of London, and I mean, he was like. I feel like there's a new heat wave every summer anyway. So it's like it's just it's hard to escape. But you do pay for it a little bit. We're getting to the end of it now, but and then you get a lot of nice time for 7-8 months before you have to deal with it again. So.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult to attract talent over here, or do you find obviously the influence of like UT, for example? I know that you completed a course over at UT as well. Is that a benefit for the town, or are you finding that as maybe more of a challenge?
No, I think UT is fantastic. There's other schools too, like Texas State, that have good cybersecurity programs, have good AI programs. There's UT's was phenomenal. I did a data science master's program there, and made some great relationships. Some that are impacting HiddenLayer as well. That are we have advisors and that are old professors of mine, and so I think that's been fantastic. So there's a good sort of talent pool. And there's a lot of schools in the area that contribute to it. I think it's a lot easier to ask an engineer to come work here and live here than it is to ask them to come work in the Bay. I think the Bay is a great area if you're an executive and you're making some crazy salary and you can handle that. Otherwise, most people are either driving in from over the mountains, or they're living paycheck to paycheck, making a crazy 6-figure job. I don't think that's. People are willing to do that for a certain set of time to to then move on to something bigger. But oftentimes you can have a cashier job out here and do better overall in terms of quality of life. And so I think it's in that regard, it's a cool place. And now that's changing. It's getting more expensive, and I always introduce myself as part of the problem. Like I came out here from one of the coasts, and there's a lot of us that are coming to this area, and that is raising prices, but it's still nowhere near. I mean, it's still like not in the same ballpark as some of those other areas. But I think it's easier to recruit here.
Yeah. I see. I define them, or a lot of people have said that they're defined as unicorns. People who were born in Austin, who've lived in Austin their whole life. You don't meet many.
Tanner's one. Tanner,
oh, really?
Tanner was born here. He grew up here. Yeah, he's a local. Most of us have transplanted at some point here, but yeah, I mean, he was here. He went to Texas State. He created that CTF program, so he did it all here. And there's a lot of really talented people who kind of can come up through the the ecosystem here and make a big impact on technology. So I think it's those people are everywhere. I think that really there's it's not a bad infrastructure here to be able to do that, and there's still a big desire of people to move here. So I think that that helps, but not only from the talent level. Like a lot of companies are moving here too. I mean, you see there's some big shifts from I think Elon's working on his second move out here for one of his companies. There's we have Dell campus, which has been here the whole time. There's a data centers going in. There's there's manufacturing coming in. So I mean, it's building as an economy as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just wrapping up, because I appreciate we're coming to the end of time here. It's been an enjoyable conversation. I want to go through just the final area, which will be some quick fire questions.
Let's do it.
So yeah, I'll just dive into them. We'll play around with them. It'll be a little bit of fun. So if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only have one person from the security industry to be with you, who would it be and why?
To do anything with security, or just
to help you survive?
Oh, to help me survive. Okay. I'm gonna go Tom Bonner. He's my security hero. He was my cybersecurity idol. Met him at Cylance. He's been in this space forever. His dad was a CTO at one of the old antivirus companies. He's been doing this for a very long time. He's just a problem solver, man. He can. Plus, if you have to talk to somebody like that for a while, if you're stranded on an island, I could talk to him forever. So I think he would be a good one. I mean, maybe we'll starve to death in 2 days, but yeah, there would be a good conversation during those 2 days. So I'm gonna say Tom.
Yeah, amazing. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
I've been given a lot of advice. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of good sort of mentors and help there. I think the best was again from Josh, my mentor for a long time, who really helped me focus on the things not to worry about, not to use your focus and energy on. Because I was sort of somebody who just, however much time in the day, that was the amount of time we were going to spend on solving different problems. But being able to kind of divest some of that to people you trust has really helped me be a much better leader. And that came from him. So I think it was really like, when you can trust somebody with something, trust them with it, give them ownership of it. It's okay if they make mistakes, like help them with that, and make sure they know that. But I think my ability to lead and focus on things that I had to spend my time on got a lot better after that.
Yeah. Keep RSA in San Francisco. Yes or no? If no, where?
It's getting bigger enough to the point where, I mean, it's post-COVID, it hasn't grown quite as much. But I mean, I think, really, Vegas does a good job with conferences. I do hate Vegas. I actually enjoy San Francisco. I like being there. Obviously, there's challenges with it, but I don't mind it. I like the weather. I like the town. So I'm down with keeping it there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. You're actually, we're at 100% keep it in San Francisco at the moment. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I should have said Austin. Now that I'm going back at it, I'm like, this is the Keep Austin Secure podcast.
I was teeing you up for that one.
I know. I blew it. Yeah, we'll get it next week.
Who was your childhood inspiration?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I don't know. I've had a lot of inspiration. Like my parents made a big impact on me. My uncles, I spent a lot of time with, and really tried to be like. I'll say my uncles. My uncle Mike. He's my youngest uncle, so he's the closest to me in age. I'd probably say he's somebody that he's just he's a very sort of he assesses a lot. He's not very like loud and very very open, but he's always thinking and I tried a lot to be like him, so I'll say him.
Amazing. If you could change one thing about the cybersecurity industry today, what would it be?
There's too many companies that aren't doing something different. They're not really at least approaching a problem different. I think there's like 5,000 cybersecurity vendors, and it's that number's growing, and there really needs to be a lot of like if you name your company, I should know why you're different than other organizations, and I think what that's creating is just a lot of noise, a lot of hard difficulty for our potential customers to understand and that kind of thing. So I think if you go to any other industry. And there's technical reasons for this, but there's usually like a leader that owns half the market. Like our leader's Palo Alto with like 7% of the market. So we already have those hills to overcome with just the fact that you really need different organizations to secure different technologies. But yeah, I think there's just a ton of companies out there that are, that don't really have a clear message or a clear value proposition. So I think I would love to see some consolidation there.
Yeah. Yeah. Final question, and probably the most important question. Favorite Austin barbecue spot?
Interstellar. That's an easy one. I can. It's like one of the newer ones.
I've not heard of it.
Oh, it's a little bit up north. We're close to it right now.
We'll have to go after
Interstellar.
This.
Try it. It's fantastic. It's newer. It was one of the shops that closed on COVID. The chef came out and started Interstellar. I don't know the whole story, but man, it's amazing. You gotta. If anybody coming to Austin, try out Interstellar Barbecue. Get there early. The line's long, but I think it's the best.
Amazing. Well, Tito, thank you so much for coming on. Absolute pleasure. Super excited to see. Well, first of all, congratulations for the success so far, and super excited to see where the business goes over the next couple of years. Yeah, excited to have you back on in 12 months' time. We'll roll it again.
We'll do it. It's always fun, man. Thanks so much, Elliot. I appreciate it.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.